struggled to make the first move? Are you lacking in resourcefulness to be the one to start? It's probably becoming repetitive, like the same old motions. You finish, then they finish, and then the same boring turns. Do you wish to add a little spice to your life? Welcome to S&M D&D, where this week we talk about why standard initiative is like a dead fish. Easy, but boring. Now everyone knows the initiative put into 5e is pretty simple to understand and very easy to work with. However, I have one major fundamental issue with it. It's boring. There is no dynamic randomness that was present in previous editions of D&D. My guess is this was set up to both be easier for new players as well as be faster. And hey, if you're someone who likes to finish in 30 seconds, more power to you. So here are my main issues with standard initiative, and later on I'll give you some ways to improve it if these are things you also don't like. First of all, it's repetitive. Second, it can lessen the impact of some cool abilities. And third, sometimes monsters don't get that many actions. Another thing we're not going to get into is how unrealistic or realistic initiative. You're fucking role-playing here. We can have a little suspension of disbelief for a little bit of structure. Going on to the repetitiveness of standard initiative. This is honestly probably one of my largest critiques about initiative, and if this is something you don't have an issue with, then just go ahead and keep using standard initiative. I don't like 5e standard initiative because it is very repetitive and there are really no changes in what order is going to happen after their first round of initiative. Meaning all combats tend to be very static with action economy. A brief example. Your party comes upon a Sphinx. You get a surprise round and you get to act first, but you also now know the initiative order that will be present from now on. This means you will have a huge advantage tactically in the way that the orders are going to go, and there won't really be any surprises coming forward. This better allows you to gauge the risk reward of your actions. So, for example, 2 fighters, mage, Sphinx, rogue, that's the initiative order. The 2 fighters swings. The mage realizes he can cast a spell like Hold Monster. It will allow the rogue and 2 fighters to go again before the Sphinx's turn, thereby potentially actually killing your monster before it even gets to its turn. For me, this is pretty boring. I find it much more fun if suddenly the Sphinx got to go first next turn, making it harder for the 3 to kill it, giving it one more round where maybe it can get some action economy off, and maybe the players are thinking, oh my god, could I die? This is obviously not perfect logic, but more of a feeling that I just have when I play with standard initiative versus a more adaptive initiative. Now moving on to the lessening of impacts of abilities. Now to be fair, this is actually true for both initiative systems or all initiative systems. However, there's a really cool mechanic we don't utilize that often, specifically related towards any ability that gives disadvantage on dexterity abilities. But before we get into that, let's look into how you can help support this channel. That's right, folks. This episode is brought to you by you. Those of you who have stopped by the Etsy page and decided that you needed some new toys in your life to make your experiences illustrious and fulfilling, you're the ones who have really helped support the channel, and we really appreciate it. If you're someone out there who is looking to help support the channel, one of the best ways you can go about doing that is by visiting our Etsy page and ordering some of the products that we have on there. And you can find these at etsy.com/shop/swordsandmagicdnd. Thank you. Now, looking at disadvantage on dexterity ability scores. This means that anything that gives advantage or disadvantage to your dexterity ability score check actually gives you advantage or disadvantage towards initiative. So you could tactically utilize things in order to give yourself a better chance to go before the creature and gain the upper hand. A couple examples of these are the restrained condition or hex from warlocks, which can impose disadvantage on dexterity ability checks. There are going to be times where this will lessen the ability of some spells that have condition modifiers on next turn or end of the monster's next turn. But then there will be times where it will extend spells longer than maybe a standard initiative would normally go. So for me, evens out. Now, looking at monsters and their action economy. This is probably another example where things might just balance out. One of the major problems with combat, and there are probably multiple ways to go about fixing this, is the action economy over the course of combat. Monsters inherently do not get that many actions, which is why there are certain things built into monsters in order to give them more actions. See legendary actions and so forth. Now you have to understand, while the chance of rolling any singular roll on a d20 is only 5%, I think it's it's pretty poor that depending on what you roll over one initiative could decide the fate of your monster either positive or negatively for the rest of combat. I would much rather average those rolls over a course of a combat, getting it more likely you end up in the middle of the initiative rather than risking being just at the beginning, at the end for the entire turn. Now this brings me into straight dex builds. What I do like about dynamic initiative systems is the person who has the highest dex won't always go first. There will be some variance where your no dex character gets to go first, but on average over the course of the fight the dex build is going to go before the non-dex builds. Again, this is not looking at realism, just the rules utilized in the game. If you're worried about dex builds, I would encourage you to homebrew dex not affecting initiative and pick something else, whether that is wisdom, intelligence, speed factors. Really, you can pick a bunch of different things in order to replace dex if you're worried about dex builds. Now there are many ways you can go about fixing a static initiative to a dynamic initiative. Some are easier and flow better than others. Our first option, speed factor initiative. What is it? Well, it's basically the idea that each weapon has a different speed associated with it. Daggers are faster than greatswords type of thinking. What are the pros to this? It gives meaning to some weapons not utilized. Good example of this is daggers. A lot of people don't tend to use daggers, and under a speed initiative, you're given a bonus for using a dagger. The second pro to this is it gives you different strategies in order to better increase your chances of going first. Maybe one turn you want to use a dagger so you get that jump on the magic user. The con, it is slow. It requires you to prepare attacks and you can't change those attacks. Some weapons I would say are overpowered versus others, and it really promotes dex builds. Now, the second option, roll initiative every time. Basically, this just means that you roll initiative every round. If you want, you can have your players pre-roll a list of 20 rolls and go down the list to speed it up, crossing the ones out that you use. If you come across a roll that would be advantage or disadvantage, just have them grab the two numbers there and cross them both out, but take the highest or the lowest respectively. So, what are the pros to this? First of all, it offers dynamic initiative. And two, it's fairly fast. Now the cons, it's not going to be as fast as a standard initiative. The second thing is you're going to notice some issues when it comes to certain spells and how they affect related to the initiative order. Now group initiative, what is it? Simply roll a d6 for your group, the enemy rolls a d6 for their group, and whoever's lower wins. If you tie, you just roll again. Pros. It can remove dex builds from being the ideal situation. It tactically allows your group to plan out what the heroes want to do and what order they want to do. It's fairly dynamic, fairly fast. Now some of the cons, always either monsters or players, never a mixture of the two groups. And two, you're gonna have a slower feel towards combat because you're not cycling between people, it's one group versus the other. Here's an example of a way to run dynamic initiative. When everyone gets to your session, have each person roll 20 d20 rolls, writing them down. You can either roll just the straight dice or add your initiative bonus to it. This will only take a couple of minutes at the beginning of your session and will help speed up the dynamic initiative. You could do the same thing honestly with standard initiative or group rolled initiative, doesn't really matter. You then ignore this list till your first fight. The first fight comes around and you say initiative because you already rolled, so saying roll initiative doesn't really work. You then just run through initiative starting at a high number and counting down. I normally like to start down from 25 and go 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, hitting each person as the number is called. I tend to play my monsters all on one turn for the sake of my DM brain. Once you hit the last initiative, you just start over. If there is a moment where an initiative round would have disadvantage or advantage, you have two options. You can have them roll an additional roll and take the highest or lowest of the two, or you can go through the first pre-roll and second pre-roll, figuring out which one is higher or which one is lower depending on what you need and cross them both out. One thing with the pre-roll initiative is people will start to have an idea where they are going to be going relative to each other in the round because they're already written out. Well, that's my thoughts on initiative. Hopefully you found this insightful and gives you some new flair to bring to your proverbial bedroom of a D&D session. If there was anything that I missed, make sure to leave it in the comments down below. While you're down there, why don't you be a pal and subscribe and give my bell a ring to get some more S&M in your life. I hope you guys will join us for more adventuring, and I hope, as always, you have a nice fucking day.